Hello and welcome to Bitch That's My Kind of Worship, a podcast by and for radical hotties the world over. My name is Lucy DK and I'm an artist and writer obsessed with building the new world. This podcast is here to guide my fellow revolutionaries as we step into a collective healing journey that centers truth, justice, and returning to our limitless power. I will share practices, guidance, and conversations to keep your internal fires lit so you can let the old world crumble without fear and step into creating the future you were born for. It is our duty to fight for our freedom, and it is our duty to win. Hey hotties! Today's Sunday sermon is going to be a little bit more of a sisterhood catch-up. I met my friend Meg when we were both in London studying tantra together. I, from that practice, started living my life so ceremonially and making ceremony a part of absolutely everything I did. And I was delighted to find a kindred spirit in Meg in that sense. I feel like since then we have been able to commune deliciously over all things spiritual and sacred, but in the context of our lives in the modern world as modern women and in modern cities. Since I left London over a year and a half ago, I was back briefly this summer and got to share a ceremony with Meg. But since then, we hadn't spoken or been able to catch up for a few months. So I wanted to record our commune, our catch up, our conversation, and bring you all into our witchy little coven and let you be flies on the wall for the ceremonial living that we really cultivate within our own experiences. I love hearing from Meg. I love her creative power, and I know she's about to step into a creative journey of her own. So I'm really excited to see how that unfolds. But for now, I really hope that you guys enjoy this beautiful conversation. If you could just start by telling the Radical Hotties a little bit about who you are and also what it was that brought you onto a path of healing or a spiritual path or however you would describe it.
Yeah. Hi, Radical Hotties. It's an honor to be here. I'm Meagan, and I also go by Meg. I think the way that I view spirituality and healing is just something that is what we're doing as we're living. There's so many notions around what spirituality is or what healing is, and I feel like it's taken on such an aesthetic.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm like, do I call myself a spiritual person? I don't know. I don't want to take on that aesthetic or
honestly, cereal.
Treat it like it's a thing, like a separate thing, like almost like a career path or like a type of person that I am. You know what I mean? I think to me, every single one of us is having a spiritual experience just being on Earth. So I can't even say that it's like a subscription or like a job thing that I like doing, you know what I mean? But it is something that I put intentional effort towards and that I engage with, that I like recognize as a theme and a journey and like a path that I'm taking in my life that maybe other people wouldn't necessarily. They've got another thing that they're doing. I resonate quite a bit with the wounded healer archetype, I would say. To me, the wounded healer archetype is a kind of like a hero or a heroine's journey, really, but that the nature of the gift of healing arises out of almost a necessity, almost one's own wound, one's own wounding, and the urgency of that kind of brings a person into this path of healing themselves, really, and then eventually being able to take that skill set, those tools, those experiences, and offer them to others who are also, who also have wounds of their own that they're working with. I feel like the wounded healer journey for me has really felt like it sort of propelled me into this direction out of my own need, out of my own need to figure out what was going on with me, or to work with these parts of me that were so tender, or just these wounds I recognized within myself that needed tending to, that felt very deep and very like they've been around for generations. And I recognized my own sensitivity and felt like I had to, I had to do something about it. I had to step forward and do something about it.
You said that you felt some of those wounds had been around for generations. I'm wondering what that feels like to you. How do you separate the feeling of what's yours versus what's lived in you or in your lineage or your family or, the collective for a long time?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I'm still finding out about that. I think that being really sensitive, it's sometimes been a challenge to feel the difference between what's mine and what's other people's. I'm still like exploring that edge where I have a moment of being like, oh wait, is this originating for me, or is this just in the room, or is this, in the space, or is this other people coming into? But for me, it feels like some of the themes that I was working with felt ancestral because it felt like it wasn't just my own personal memory. It wasn't like I was like, oh, this thing happened to me when I was this age, and that's what this is, necessarily, you know what I mean? I could feel these sort of themes or threads of suffering or pain or, and they come with gifts too. Like they're more complex. It's not like they're just bad, but they're like there's a theme or there's a thread or there's a thing, and I could feel those alive in me, but I couldn't necessarily pinpoint all of them to a thing that happened in my personal life. I could look at relatives or parents or start working my way back and recognize these things in them too, and that kind of helped me be like, oh, this is in, and I guess now we're getting into things like epigenetics or things like things being alive in your biology that also come through just from being born into the lineage that you're born into.
Yeah. Is there a particular energy in your lineage that you've been unpacking lately? Or anything this is something that I was reflecting on this week as I was just deep in some ancestral healing. And it's funny because I feel like as you're doing the work over a period of time, you start to maybe feel or see these things that are coming up kind of again and again in different ways or different manifestations. And yeah, I'm wondering if there's been anything like sticky or interesting or curious that you feel like when you think about your lineage, you're like, we really have to break this curse, or we really have to figure this one out.
Yes, I love how you're saying that, because they do feel like curses. And I think I can, when you say it like that, it feels like a story, or it feels like a, it's like a, oh, it's just a curse. Like, we just have to lift the curse. It's fine. Which also gives me this feeling of like it's a quest. We're on a quest, or we're on a journey. And there's some things that we just it's like that's gotta go, and we just gotta work with it. But it's not us. Like, it's not the fundamental piece of like who our family is or who we are. There's just this affliction that we need to work with, And I also want to, like, it also feels like those types of what we're calling a curse or an affliction, like, is such a teacher too. That it brings, I feel like, so much, and it tempers a person, and it like, it to me, it's like if it weren't for some of these if it weren't for this grist for the mill or these challenges that we face, like, I feel like we really do come here to solve things or figure things out, and like problems and challenges are actually really interesting. They're actually the interesting stuff of our lives if we allow them to kind of be like that, and if we maybe acknowledge that we have a choice in that too. Like, we can't always, but we can work towards kind of choosing our problems, or choosing better problems, or choosing more interesting problems, or evolving our problems. But these things I really like to think of these things as gifts in disguise, or maybe just straight up gifts. But I feel like something where I'm like, guys, we can't, no more of this, we're not doing this anymore. This is ending with us.
Today.
Yeah, immediately, is the repression, the emotional repression, the repression of the feminine. Recognize myself as such an expressive person, and such a creative person, and these things have kind of been pushed pushed down, you know, slowly over time, just kind of made their way down there further and further, and covered in these sort of layers of tightening and holding. And it feels so bad, and there's so much that I have to express. And there's so much that still is held in my body that I can feel in my muscles and my, you know, it shows up in this tension and this holding in my body too. But so much of it is emotion, an emotion that wants to make its way out and that has been making its way out. And it feels so good when those channels start opening, and it's actually, I can recognize a safety that I'm starting to develop within myself and with groups of people and others who I, you know, I'm like, oh, I can actually slowly let this part of me know that it's safe. And then naturally that part of me wants, you know, I can just sit and hang out with it and see what it's about. And eventually there's grief that emerges, or like I really got to work with my anger and get her little by little to kind of come out, come play, and let that part of me out. So it feels like there's a lot of repressed emotion, anger, rage, grief, like also joy.
It's the true expression, like it's the unbounded, free, wild.
Yes.
It's so interesting because you and I met when we were studying tantra yoga. I don't know if studying is the right word, but we were in community,
so.
in that
studious.
it was very studious, right? Like it really felt like study. When you speak about the repression of the feminine, and it would be a whole other conversation to go into the politics of femininity within that space and in tantra and all of these things. But what it's really making me think of is what I really feel like both of us really came away with from that practice in deep part was ritual and ceremony as a way of allowing our feminine expression to move through and past that historical repression, right? And to like really bake into our lives the fact that being wildly expressed and wildly immersed in our lives and like devotional to our lives was what it meant to truly touch that aliveness that I feel like tantra is about, in terms of being able to touch all parts of life and like really embody life and like how it feels to really claim that devotion to self. But what I was hoping that you could speak to is how ceremony has played a part for you in allowing that expression maybe to reveal itself.
Yeah. I feel like these sorts of things, ceremony and ritual, they really like make a space. Like to me, they're really a container and like a space setting and like creating a environment for something to unfold, and a container for it to be held within. And it also brings in an element of like the symbolic, which I feel is really powerful, like working with symbols and symbolizing an energy or theme or something that's going on in our life. It's like to make it into a something we can maybe touch or hold, and we can like look at and like bring it maybe a little bit outside of us and see it and can engage with it and recognize it in a different way, and even allow it to move through us like in a way that maybe wouldn't be so easy otherwise. So like my personal experience with ceremony and ritual, like ritual feels like it can be, ritual feels so accessible. Ritual feels like I just like try to weave ritual into my day. Like I already have rituals. We all already have rituals in our day, you know, like the way you start your morning, or like the beverage that you choose to make, or maybe you have your favorite things you do, or there's a certain way in which you approach the way that you get ready before you go out to an important event, or like little rituals I'll do with my morning practice. It's like like plugging in. But even just little moments of something we do sort of repeatedly, it like situates us in space and time and creates a rhythm in our lives that I feel like is so important, and so the way that we as humans have always like been, you know, how we engage with the seasons, how we engage with like nature. That's how we know where we are in the wheel of time or in our lives or in our day, you know, like so you can make rituals what you want, I feel, you know, and they can really like add this, I feel, structure and rhythm into my day when I do them. And for me, ceremony has shown up as maybe lesser frequent, but like maybe a bigger piece of kind of like work, you could say, or like something that I've put intention around and put structure around and invited a witness in, and like I had an intention for it, and kind of it was almost like putting on a little mini play, or like something like that, where it you know, it kind of had a shape, and it had a start and an end, and it was a bigger event than the day-to-day kind of rituals that I like to weave into my life.
I would love to get into some specific ceremonies. Yeah, maybe if you could talk about and describe one that was very meaningful or transformative for you, and what it was like, what you did, and how it felt, what the effect was, why you did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think by far and I'm like, you know, I'm not a professional or expert on ceremonies.
I would beg to differ.
But the biggest one that I've ever done that I feel like the impacts of it will still unfold throughout this decade that I'm now in is the ceremony that I did for my 30th birthday. And
this, by the way, yeah, for anyone listening, I'm like, this has become infamous in my sense of the world. Like, I feel like other people have like historical events, historical figures. I'm like Meg's ceremony for her 30th. Like, this is something that is become a legacy, like even within this year. I feel like it so activated me when I heard it, and yeah, I'm just excited for everybody to hear about this, so please go ahead.
Yes, such high praise, thank you. That makes my heart yeah, so I knew I wanted to mark this passing into this new decade, into my 30th year. I knew I wanted to mark it somehow, and to do something special around it for myself. And I had already sort of been in a habit of carving out these spaces for myself in a different way. Like 3-ish years ago, New Year's was approaching, and I wasn't really feeling any of the plans, or I don't know, kind of did all the array of different New Year's kind of things, and I wanted to do something different, and so I took myself away, and I did a New Year's on my own. I did a solo New Year's, and I got a tiny home out in the countryside, and I spent the long weekend for New Year's by myself. No tech, no podcasts. I don't even think I read. I was really, you know, working with just what was just me, and being there, and like cooking my meals and going on walks, and going by candlelight when it got dark out, and just trying to really pare it back as much as possible and see how it felt to just really move into a new year in this really different way. And I felt like it really moved a lot for me that weekend. Actually was really a seed to other things that came in my life, and so I recognized how powerful it was for me to carve out space and time for myself, and especially as women, this is absolutely essential. Like, I read about it all the time, various different just like significant works from different women. There's some element of like needing to kind of come back into ourselves, and we do this in our cycle, we do this, you know, like, but any sort of creative process, whether you're a man or a woman, it does have this it's like it needs this space to breathe, and we need to plant seeds, and we need that time to, like, you know, come into your office, or come into your room, or, you know, come back to yourself somehow. and almost gather your energy or synthesize or like like take whatever inspiration you have and distill it. Like that feels like an important piece to like just clear out all the noise that we so often are just in our day-to-days without even realizing how loud the volume is getting, So I'd end up doing that again for several years to come, doing these sort of solo New Year's, and I found these, and I was kind of starting to play around with doing these things for myself, and I was working with a body worker last year, and so we had been doing some work together, and he was actually the one who ended up being the witness for me and the co-creator for me in this ceremony. So yeah, I had done these solo New Year's, let's say it was around like 2022, 2023, around that time. I did several of them in a row. And then come to last year, and I had been like, I'd been working with this body worker for a year. I had been, had my tantra kind of exploration. I had started to move into a different space, and was in a container, like a circle of women for a year. We were gathering, so it was kind of like starting to really commit to these spaces that I was showing up in, and exploring these things. And so knowing that I wanted to mark my 30th in a significant way, having all these things kind of floating around that I'd already been working with, and I kind of had the idea of creating a sort of ceremony for myself that had a storyline, and had been working with different, and this is kind of where other spaces that I'm in, where we're working with, where I'm in a group of women, and we're really, we're in a healing group really, and we're kind of on this journey with each other and with ourselves, and that's a whole thing, but a lot of that is very heart-centered and really pulling in different faces of the divine feminine and working with different goddesses, and that energy that all of those figures represent in different ways. And I really wanted this ceremony ended up being really held by that energy, and so I kind of had a storyline I knew I kind of wanted to tell, and there were songs and there were different pieces that kind of made their way into the ceremony. But overall, it was sort of it was like a death and rebirth story. I wanted to honor where I had come from up until this point. Like, here I am, I'm about to cross this threshold of 30, and really like coming into my own life and wondering what that will look like for me as I claim that for my future, and knowing that I'm wanting to live, like having this intention to live a life that's fully my own, and really like own whatever that looks like, and like knowing that might not be like it's not going to be like a kind of conventional path. I don't know what it's going to be like, but knowing that I want it to be mine, and that I'm really like companioning myself through this thresholds. And so I wanted to recognize all the younger parts of me that like got me here, and maybe what they had gone through and what I had maybe lost in those parts of my life, and what I was reclaiming. So one of the stories that felt like it was I was pulling on was the story of the Mother Moon. I read it. Oh, I can't remember where I read it from, but it shows up in multiple things. But it's a myth. It's a story, and it's about the Mother Moon, and it's a I'm going to tell the whole story, but basically she kind of has this death and rebirth. Like, she comes down to help the people. She ends up getting stuck in a bog, and she gets buried, and the villagers end up coming out looking for her, and and they find her, and she gets kind of reborn and up into the sky. It's kind of like they digging and reclaiming this feminine essence and bringing that up. So it was that sort of death and rebirth story that I was going for, and kind of the parts of myself that I maybe lost along the way, and that I was recollecting and bringing this wholeness with me as I ushered myself into this new next phase. And it was really important to have a witness too. Like, my body worker kind of held the space and witnessed me, and also like made it so that I didn't have to worry about things. You know, we had music playing, there was a whole structure to it. It was kind of almost like a play.
Yeah,
A
because what did
story.
you do like within the ceremony?
Yeah.
Like for people who maybe don't practice ceremony like as a part of
Hmm.
their life, like what does that actually look like when you were
Yeah.
in it? Yeah.
Yeah, and of course you can do it all sorts of ways, but we brought some things that felt really important was that there was an altar space. There was some sort of space that was where we were kind of um, that it maybe sort of grounded what we were doing. We had set up an altar and brought offerings. So I had brought an offering, and my body worker had brought an offering as well. I brought pumpkin seeds, and he brought strawberries. So we were bringing something into the space that we were
Obsessed.
offering. And we had an altar set up, and it felt like it was representing like the intentions that I was wanting to bring into the ceremony. So there was something about like a union, and like this also for background, this body worker has a tantra background as well. So working with these sorts, and in tantra there's a lot about polarity and working with like, you know, masculine and feminine energies, just as energies that exist in the world, like yin and yang, not like man and woman. Just working with these energies and how these different energies that make up the world and that exist within each and every one of us, come together to make this sort of union and this sort of wholeness that exists within each of us. And we can see all kinds of polarities in the world, and they're tugging, and they're creating these poles that, so we can recognize them as separate things, and we can also bring them together. And so there was that sort of theme of union. So we had a sort of representation of these two yin and yang energies kind of coming together. And I had brought my own, like I have my own altar that I keep in my home and in my room. So I had brought in elements of my own altar setup in too, also to make it feel like this is my space. It's almost like bringing something comforting and comfortable from home to kind of
Yes, I
spread
feel
that.
like you needed to bring more than the pumpkin seeds, like for the
Yeah,
30th after all.
right. So we set up the whole party. Like you set up all the party
Yes.
favors.
Mm.
You set up all the like, you know. So we get our altar set up, and this is like, okay, these are some symbols, kind of like I was saying before,
Yes.
and this grounds the space. And there was an opening, and like Paul and I had written up this script, just to kind of guide what was happening and the story that we were telling. And so he was kind of reading some parts of it. He also stated what his role in the thing. So he was like, I'm here to witness. I'm here to hold this space. And we called in who we wanted. This is where the unseen comes in, and we're working with some different energies. We're calling it in who we want to be there as witness and to hold the space too. And it also
Yes.
felt very much like the mother, that energy, however you resonate with that, like the divine feminine is hitting you as like a corny spiritual thing, that's fine. Like, but this mother like energy that is the earth, and that is what holds us and where we come from, and that sort of energy was really holding and carrying me through this ceremony. We kept referencing back to that energy, and there were prayers that were kind of Paul was reading or I was reading as we were going through the stages. And there were like kind of three main stages, I guess, of like this sort of loss and death, and then this sort of rebirth and reclamation, that were kind of two separate things, but that kind of came in as the second part of the thing. And so there was a sort of, what I wanted to be represented was some sort of like me giving essential parts of myself away in order to be loved and accepted, in order to be, in order to survive, in order to do what I needed to do. In my early life, there were maybe things I didn't recognize how precious they were, or I didn't know how to hold them safe for myself. And I saw that they were like gold, like tokens that I was like, here, you can have that. Will you, will that mean we can be in a relationship together, or that I can hang out with you guys or whatever? So, ways in which I wasn't always being authentic to myself, or I kind of lost maybe some of those core pieces of me that are always there, but that maybe I lost along the way somehow. And they were represented by these seashells. So, which was like something I a lot of this was real, like very spontaneous. Like Paul and I were up like the night before, kind of finalizing things, and it really just came together within 24 hours.
It's so amazing. And I feel like all the best things are spontaneous like that, because that's when
Totally.
we almost allow spirit to lead and be like, okay, like this is the structure. This is what I want to mark, or this is the threshold, but like bring in the magic. Like what's it gonna be? What's it gonna do? And it's even funny hearing you speak about that with the giving away parts of yourself, like almost like over the course of life, and coming back and realizing that, oh wow, like it's so easy to lose these parts of me right when I'm just going through and like trying to survive and all of this. And it's making me even reflect on how I feel like now I almost use ceremony as a way to protect the relationships I enter. Like I was having this almost like giggle to myself the other day, because I was like, I think it's like impossible for, and even in romantic relationships, it's like, I think it's impossible for a man to date me now without me initiating him. Because I was just starting to realize, like, I've just integrated ceremony so much, because it is actually meant that now when I enter any kind of connection even, or like, I mean, it's a lot easier to bring it in one-on-one. So that's why I think romantic relationships, it becomes particularly poignant. But I think in friendship as well, like even, or you were at my birthday ceremony, but I think it just means that then people always are meeting you in that space and like on that level. But I think what's so beautiful about this ceremony that you're describing is you're almost like getting to take stock of everything that's like happened up to that point, and then really like recalibrate the thing that you want to bring into almost the new identity, if you like, that you're taking on and embodying and like coming out into this decade with. So I'm wondering what the effect of the ceremony was for you and how it felt transforming potentially, or maybe how did it feel for you? What did it do for you? What was the impact?
Yeah, I love what you're. I love that the way that you're describing, even the way you're bringing ceremony into your life, is like a marker of like beginnings of things, or like relational things. Like, I feel like that's what it's so good for. So yeah, I felt like in doing this act, it was like in doing a gesture. I was doing this gesture of recognition that parts of me that I was reclaiming. There was parts of me that and it wasn't like, oh, I'm leaving these parts of me behind and I'm stepping into. It was like, you're all coming with. We're bringing you all back in. And there are of course things that need to be cut away and die away too. And so it was kind of a recognition of that. Like, there is a chapter of my life that's closing, and so that was what the death thing was representing. And when I had the scene of the quote unquote dying scene, I kind of like laid in this sort of I was like kind of curled up on the floor, and I entered into this sort of maybe like 20-minute meditation to really acknowledge, and there was just silence to really like acknowledge that. And then in the rebirth, it was like I was these shells that I had mentioned, like they had words, I'd written words on them of different pieces of me that I felt were like essential to me, kind of core essence pieces of me, and they had ended up getting scattered all over the floor in the ritual. And so after the death scene, and I had come back into this rebirth, I was recollecting these shells, and I was singing as I was doing it. I was kind of like singing my own song, and there was something so tender and sweet about it. And I also really noticed like what shells I picked up first, what words were on them. What you were saying about like leaving space for spirit to come in is essential, because I had written, I had done all my own stuff, and I did the best I could with the pieces that I had. But what made it come together was that leaving space for it to be. I kind of showed up and was like, here's what I have, let's call in some help and like let it happen, let it flow how it will. And so there were some core words that I felt like stuck with me too as I was doing that reclamation part, and it was like creative expression and leadership and things like this that I was like picking up, that I noticed I picked up first. But yeah, reclaiming all these shells, coming back into this wholeness, and there was this threshold that I stepped over. And I was sort of greeted by Paul, who greeted me with flowers, and we had a dance, and like us dancing was this representation of this sort of union of these energies within me, and like this dance that I'm in my life, and like how I want to move it going forward. And so, and also just a celebration, and also just to move the energy that we had just kind of cultivated, to like move it through our bodies, also felt like that kind of somatic part of just letting it flow through my actual physicality. So,
and I feel like so much of that as well, like even the self-expression that you speak about, is something that the ceremony itself, especially when you create it as something that you're witnessed in, is demanding you step into, right? Like the fact that you are there, singing, dancing, lying down on the floor, like moving through all of these things, which maybe on the surface, because of all the embodiment work you've done, feel natural to this point and feel, but actually, I don't know how you were maybe 5-10 years ago. When I look back at myself, before I stepped into a lot of this practice or a lot of this work, these things would have been like mortifying to me, to have somebody see me so vulnerably, embodying and moving through the dance of my life, as you say. Like, I feel like ceremony for me is often where I'm crying and expressing and moving my body in insane ways because of the energy that is coming through and the healing that my body wants to let happen. And within that space, especially when you're calling in a lot of energies, a lot wants to move and you feel it come up. But the real test is, okay, are you going to embody it? Are you going to be witness in it? Are you going to risk the identity that you've had up until this point of the person who is repressed, who is like scared to express, who doesn't want to speak, who doesn't want to sing? Or are you going to step deeper into the person that you're becoming? Are you going to cross the threshold, right? And it's like the ceremony itself becomes the portal that allows you to step into that very identity that you're picking up on the shells and saying you're becoming. It's like you're already that, right? Like by the end of the ceremony.
Yes, completely. Yes, and like that's what it does feel so much like a portal, a container, and like it is evoking something to come through, that wants to come through, and just making the gestures and allowing, like a lot of it does feel like allowing something to move, to come through. And it is so much about letting that happen and letting yourself be seen in that, which is such an important piece. That's why I feel like the being witness is so important. It's like letting this be known, letting this be seen, bringing it into the light, and like just letting it hang out there. And it is such a vulnerable act. It's a massively vulnerable act, and to allow other people in on it too. So it takes guts, I think. It's not for the, it's like, and that's why I feel like you got to be prepared when you do ceremony, when you evoke these energies, when you step into these spaces. You got to be prepared to change your life, or to allow your life to change, or to like see it through. And that's what I felt like.
It's just making me think. I'm just trying to think, like, what's the craziest thing I've ever done during a ceremony? I feel like it just gets so wild and so weird, like, so quickly.
It can.
But yeah.
It really can. And yeah, there's something about it that's like it's not logical, or it's not rational. So I'm like snotty and crying, or I'm like, I've been in spaces where I'm like growling, or I'm hissing, or I'm like moving, I'm like,
yes,
it can be all sorts of ways. But really letting it come through, I feel like is so important. And then it feels like it opens the door too. It's like it opens a space that's like, okay, this is here now. And you were asking about the impact, and it wasn't like I woke up the next day and was like, wow, I'm in the other side of the portal now, everything's different. But it was like, it's like a slow burn. It's like something that feels like it sets into the roots, or into the foundation. And I like knew that was there, and I was like tilling that, and I was going to carry it forward. It's almost also like an impulse too, to like, you kind of keep that going. Like I kind of like, those shells to this day are on my altar, and they're kind of the centerpiece in my altar.
Beautiful. Yes.
So I always have those shells, and that's why the objects and symbols do feel like they can be so important, because they are physical reminders of something. You can look at that. I look at that every day, and I remember that that's what I'm carrying forth, or that's what I'm committing to, or that's the wholeness that's at the center of my altar, at the center of my life. Like,
Yes. Can we talk about 30, by the way? Because I feel like that's where I am right now, in a big part of my spiritual work is approaching that threshold. I'm 28, but the pulling apart of the conditioning that has been placed upon my life versus like my true soul desire and soul calling, right? And I think as I like go deep into that exploration, I think what has been so clear to me is like, I'm just like, yeah, like patriarchy is everywhere. Like it's everywhere. It's even in the places you don't think it is. It's even in you, in places you didn't think it was there. And so many places where I've just been like going deeper and deeper into myself, and places where I've created so many illusions or created so many stories, right? That I've told myself, this is my desire, or this is that. And then the deeper I go in and the more I pick it apart, the more I'm like, oh, like, this was actually never mine.
yeah.
But then the parts that are so true to what it does mean to be a woman moving through this very, very magic and truly like portal like time in life, and like that journey almost into the energy of mother somehow in some way, not in necessarily a physical sense, but in the sense of what it means to really come into connection with the mother of the earth and understanding that path. And yeah, I would just love to hear from your perspective, like what it was like to approach that threshold in just like a social sense, a society sense, and like how you found or are still continue to find like your sense of alignment and self and truth through that journey, and through that fear, I think sometimes as well. Like at least to me, it often manifests as these fears I have to lift off myself and like unmask from within my body.
Oh my god, girl, yeah. I mean, also like what you're saying about what you're saying, just what you're saying. It's like I feel what I recognized, what I really felt like I was trying to like make the choice to step into, because I'm not a mother at this point, and I don't know if I'll have kids. And but I do know, even if I do have a kid, then that will be not, it won't be in a quote unquote conventional way, and like no shade to that path. It's more so just to say that that path has a certain stepwise flow to it, or like it's like there's some known things that you do when you're pursuing a sort of path where you get married and you have kids and you get a house and you do those things. Those things are beautiful, and it's more so what I'm speaking to is like knowing that I'm not taking that I'm not following any sort of template laid out or I mean, of course I am in ways, but like I'm trying to live a life that really feels like it is one that I designed, and one that, you know, what they say about like, you know, you're on the path when it disappears, or like the pathless path.
So real.
The pathless path. That's why it's so scary, because you're like, where is it? Where do I go? You're telling me I have to trust myself and my own intuition. What if I make a mistake and then I'm wrong? Then I'm responsible.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Like, all these fears, like you're saying, and really not having gone through, and I've watched my sister give birth to her first child, and it was so magic, and she's a mother now, and this is such a, talk about thresholds, like this is an immense threshold to step through in motherhood, and she did an all-natural birth, and in a way where she really wanted to, like, you know, she had birth goals, and she really stepped through it in a certain way where she was like, here's how I want to do this. If I, you know, sometimes you can't help it, it's going to go how it's going to go, but she kind of stepped through this threshold for herself, and she's on a different path than me, but you know, becoming a mother, it's like there's such a obviously physical element to that, but you physically step into that archetype, and you have the experience of having this being to care for, and what that really calls you into, and you know, this role and this this love or this devotion that you can experience through becoming a mother, and not giving birth physically and not being a mother in that way, not having physical children, but like dreaming up the creative children that I want to have, and projects, and you know, collaborations and different things. That is a birthing and a creative process too. But even just recognizing myself as a mother, I think this can be such a challenging thing for women, of like, ooh, I'm like having kids or not having kids, or how you want to live your life. That has something that has been mandated for so many generations. It's actually such a huge privilege to be in a position where I can choose what I want to do with my future. And thinking about the women who have come before me who didn't have so much choice, and some elements they kind of had to, there's something that they just had to go along with that was not the way that they wanted to live. You know, or just some sort of expectation or some sort of something they had to fit themselves into. Of course, we still have those things, like we still, you know, we have responsibilities, or we live in a society, but there's so much choice available that I'm like, this is an honor, and I want to like do that, really like squeeze the juice out of that for myself and for maybe the women who came before me, you know, who had dreams they couldn't fulfill, or had, you know, some things that they just didn't get to put on the table or see through, or like realize like, oh, my plant wants to come hang out with us. So I feel like that's important. Recognizing myself as a mother, not to a baby, but to myself, but to the younger parts of me, or to there's a mother energy I can bring into spaces that I'm stepping into, and you know, and yeah, like recognizing that there is no template for life, and I am doing all kinds of, I can experiment with all sorts of things. There's all sorts of, you know, like there's things that I feel passionate about that I can devote time to, and to my own becoming the truest, realist version of myself, and to see how good it can get, and to see what relationships are out there for me, or what are the most true desires of like my heart, like what are the things that are truest, that I really truly want to know or to be in life. And it takes time to like unearth those, you know, and
It's
it's a
really,
luxury to have that time and space.
it's really, really beautiful. And I think when I think of you, I think of someone who really has devotion to learning as well. And I think I even almost connect anything I learn from you to all the women that you learn from in some kind of way, right? Like, I feel like you have really walked with women walking the path, who have been doing that in different ways, and as part of different generations and different communities on different land and all these pieces. And I'm just wondering, when you reflect on moving in to these next years, and everything that you just spoke about, that unearthing process of the heart's desire, which, as you say, takes time and like is a journey and like isn't something to be rushed, but it is an unfolding. I'm just wondering if there's anything that you've learned from these women who have taught you, who teach you, that feels resonant to share with people now.
Yeah. Feels like a lot. I feel like something that I I so admire and am really feel like I'm being changed by is to witness women who have really come into their own center, and who are really like psychically whole, like who really are self-possessed, and who maybe, you know, they're maybe in their 50s or their 60s and really like are landing in this place of self-authority. And also the like, because I feel like we have such a I feel like we've got a really complicated relationship with authority in these times, and like rightfully so. We can look at all like the authority figures in the world we thought we could trust, who are, you know, and we're seeing these horrors exposed, and we're seeing this destruction of, you know, this patriarchal design and way of living has imparted, and so we're kind of like down with hierarchies, down with these things, like down with authority, and it feels like there is truth in that for sure. And also authority still has its place, and like it feels like it's a balance. Like we want to be our own authorities, and we want to have, you know, more mycelial network type of ways of being in spaces, more matriarchal, you could say. But we also don't. I also feel like there's there can be such a pendulum swing sort of response to kind of being like, oh, we were so in this sort of patriarchal way of being, now let's swing the other way around, and you can see kind of like men feeling ashamed to be men, you know, or like you can see this sort of you know, it can swing in the other direction, and it feels like where we're really wanting to land is somewhere in the middle, where we use both things when they're needed. And, you know, so things like authority or a certain hierarchy or something can come into play when it's helpful and when it's beneficial. And so women that I've learned from who are not afraid to be authority figures, or that sort of energy for themselves and for those who they are leading, and like take that seriously, and humbly, you know, and like, but really stand in that power, and really own that. I find that really beautiful, and like what leadership, it's like this inquiry as well for me of just like what it really means to be in community, and what it really means to lead, and what these things actually are in practice, and how to live in a way that is like deeply relational, and also like sort of sovereign as well, like where you really have yourself and you're really standing in that center point, and how to hold those two things at the same time, you know. Feels like something that some of these very, you know, wise and powerful women that I feel like I've been able to witness really like embody that kind of energy that I feel like is so vital.
Super beautiful, super resonant, and it makes me think as well of, especially for people, not just women, but those of us where we have identities where we have been repressed within this design of the society we have today, how much it can sometimes take to truly claim authority, but how important it is that we do once we've earned it, right? Once we embody it. And that's something I've been experiencing on my journey too, is especially when we come from a lot of collectivist cultures, or when there's an energy of not putting your head above or not being seen so much, it can take a lot to truly stand in the authority of the calling you've been given, or the knowledge you've been given to share, or what it is that you're here to do. But as you say, I think especially women who are doing that work and have been doing that work and have spent so much time like becoming who they are, it's so activating even to be in the presence of someone like that, you know.
Massively. I find them terrifying and fascinating, and yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah. And I think it's so beautiful that we get to share community like this together as well. Like even having this conversation, I feel like has been super activating for me. Our friendship is super activating for me. And so, yeah, I just want to thank you for sharing your presence with the podcast. And here's to being ancient babes forever and always.
Forever and always. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, this theme of being ancient, you know, we didn't directly touch on it, but it is kind of this mixing old and new, I guess, like mixing or recognizing also just the I guess like how ancient we really are, how ancient our bodies are, like how long it took for us to evolve into even these forms these bodies that we have, like we are ancient. And bringing in ancient like wisdom that's always been here, wisdom we can get from nature, wisdom we get from you know, just that we've been gifted from lineage and from just it bringing into times where we have a corporate job or we have I guess quote unquote modern day concerns or worries or realities, and blending those two things. And I feel like that's something that I am always reminded of whenever we speak, and it is such a gorgeous thing to weave into the everyday, you know, weave these things into the everyday. And you know, like I said in the beginning, I feel like things like spirituality, it has such a sort of like aesthetic, or it can have all these sort of ideas or concepts around what that even is, but it really feels like it's about bringing spirit, however you want to like define that, whatever makes you feel like you're connected to your environment or to the people around you, or however that really lands. But you can feel it when you're sort of plugging into something that's beyond just your, you know, this is me and I'm here and this is my person, this is my ego, or this is what I'm doing in my life. Like whenever you can really get that plug in and have that experience, and it could be just in a little moment, but weaving that into like the everyday, it feels so essential for living a vital, alive life that's on purpose.
I feel like that is truly all of it. And it really reminds us as well when we're going through that sense of the like modern pieces that I think can sometimes make us feel in a way detached from spirit, right? Like I feel like at least when I was beginning my path, there was this sense that, oh, like it's so great to be up here or to be doing these ceremonies or to be living in this way or to like ritualize life, but then I have to go back to reality, and that's such a like crash, or such a like, oh, like I don't want to be here. And actually the beauty, and especially I feel like what I've experienced in this past year of life, is the deep integration of that. So the point where the simple embodiment of who you are is to know that all of these things exist at exactly the same time. And I think that's what we've both been discovering, is that we can be people who have all of those shades within us. And as you've so beautifully pointed out, like life is spiritual, like spirituality is just life, essentially. And to be able to experience all of those things, and to know that there doesn't need to be a mask, there doesn't need to be a sense of separation, but that by bringing all these pieces together, we can truly experience, I guess, what the tantra classes were always trying to teach us, which is that life is amazing, life is beautiful, there is just joy and gifts and connection wherever you look, even in the parts that are difficult, as you say, the problems, we can evolve our problems. So yeah,
Completely,
super.
yeah. And it feels like any sort of spiritual practice, it's just like clearing our lenses a little bit so that we have eyes to see in our everyday life where that magic is, you know? Because it is not separate. It is in our day-to-day lives. It is in everything that already exists in our day-to-day lives. So it really, any of these ceremonies or any of these things, it's just to enrich and enhance the day-to-day life that we live. It's not a way to escape it or to, you know, yeah, For sure.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being a guest on Bitch, That's My Kind of Worship. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Angel. I love you. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Bitch, That's My Kind of Worship, and you can follow Radical Hotties on Substack for more where that came from. See you next time.